My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale-Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale-up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale-up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Here today with Marc Stolz from Olvin. Marc, great to have you here.
Great to have you too. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. A very warm morning as we're recording this. But yeah, looking forward to the conversation today. And like always, I'd like guests to kind of introduce themselves and the company that they are a part of as well, rather than me giving a pitch on their behalf. I'd like people to hear it from the relevant person, the guest themselves. So over to you for a little bit of intro first.
Yes, of course. So my name is Marc, and I've been working with a company called Olvin for about 4.5 years now. And we started the company because we saw that there was a disconnect between the online and the offline world. And that's mainly getting access to data. So for online businesses, for many years, it's been really easy to collect and measure data of their consumers. So for instance, if you go online on a website and you're trying to analyze basically which websites people have been visiting, how long they've been staying on a page, which other websites are they browsing, it's very easy. But the moment you close your laptop and you actually own a physical business, it becomes more tricky. The only data that you have available is mainly your sales data, but then you don't really understand what's happening outside, what is affecting your business. Why has it been more popular? Why there have been more people in my store this week than last week? And is that a problem that's linked to myself as a business, or is it just the whole industry that's suffering? So we decided to create a very easy and simple tool for any business owners, let it be a mom and pop shop or a big enterprise business, to really understand consumer behavior and their journey. So not only looking at historically where consumers have been, but we thought the most important, especially after the pandemic, is being able to predict where consumers will be next. So that's why we created this dashboard, this platform that uses AI and machine learning to really understand consumer behavior and analyzes consumer footfall data. So the way we actually analyze that data is by looking at what we call geospatial data. Yeah. And that's a blend of different data sources. So the core of what we do is GPS, mobile location data. And all that data that we receive, it comes from a variety of sources, such as apps, Wi-Fi sensors, Bluetooth sensors. And all the data that we collect is consented, anonymized, and then aggregated and used for statistical purposes. So we do not hold any personal information. We don't know which device it's from or any kind of personal detail from people. We just know time and a location. So that's really good, but it doesn't give us much information. So we need to start enriching that data to make it talk. So we add different layers of data. So we add mapping data to understand where this device has been seen on a map. And then we add another source, which is called point of interest data, POI. And this is basically understanding if that device or that person or that individual has been seen in a store and which type of store these people visited. So that's great. It tells us where people have been, but then we add additional data sources to really give context and try to understand why these people have been there. So we look at, for instance, weather data, transport data, demographic data, but also credit data to really get that context and see which type of individuals go to which type of stores. And then we do predictive insights up to 90 days ahead. So we look at all the historical data that we received. So we have access to about 5 years of historical data. And then we train our models daily to being able to predict up to 3 months ahead how many people will be either in an area, in a city, in a zip code, or even down to a store. And then the use cases that we have right now are predominantly for retail and commercial real estate. In retail, we help businesses with staff scheduling. How can they make sure that they have the right people in the right store at the right time? But we also help them with store operations, making sure they have the right opening hours, that they have the right inventory. We also support with optimizing the marketing campaigns. Are they actually targeting or making sure that they're communicating to the right consumers? And then finally, we also help them understand where to open or close a new store. That's been especially important after COVID. There's been such a shift of demographics that we can actually support with that, looking at footfall and comparing pre-pandemic levels with actual levels nowadays. And then we're also supporting commercial real estate, so landlords, property developers, but also brokers, to understand the financial viability of a site. Does it make sense to buy this mall or buy this specific store based on footfall data? Or we can also support them to get access to data to attract the right tenants. So before, people used to use a lot of outdated data, which is census data, or they would actually send a team to a specific location to really analyze the venue, used old clickers to actually count people in front of stores. We're really trying to optimize that by just being able to provide that data in just a couple of clicks, and really get another source of data to actually be able to take strategic decisions. So we're not only saving time, but always saving money as well.
Yeah, I see. It sounds like there's a number of benefits there from optimizing what they're already doing, as well as making the most of potential opportunities that they're completely unaware of at the moment.
Absolutely. And these are the two big industries that we're focusing right now. Obviously, we start to get interest from a lot of different businesses, so hospitality, for instance, but we also have governments, so municipalities that really want to get access to data, and they see a lot of use cases. We also have hedge funds that want to use our data to predict, how the performance of some companies will affect the stock based on footfall. So there are a lot of different use cases, but as you can probably imagine, being a small growing company, we can only cover so much with our resources.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess on that point, the company is relatively new, and how did the company kind of come about in the first place, I suppose, and decide on those use cases to start with?
It's a great question. Well, at the beginning, we thought about using basically just the location data to help brick and mortar businesses, but most importantly, the drinks trade. Because we actually had a side project where we were having our coffee shop, and we were kind of facing these types of questions, and from one day to another, nobody would be coming, or like the number of people would be really, really significantly less than another day, and we would know why that was impacting our business. And we started raising these questions, and we thought, okay, it would be great to have a tool that could help us, answer these questions. So really focus on hospitality at the beginning. And, we managed to speak to very large companies like Heineken or LVMH. And I'll always remember a moment in a meeting with LVMH. They were like, we really like what you do, but why do you only focus on hospitality? It would be great to have basically what you're currently building, but for all the rest of the other brick and mortar businesses. And it's great to look at historical data, but we would also love to be able to know what's going to happen in the future. So at that point, it was kind of a pivotal moment for us where we decided to completely refocus and shift our objective and really focus on predictions. So we started restructuring the team, hiring a lot of data engineers and data scientists to build basically our models and use the existing data that we had so that we could start provide predictions and forecasts for businesses. And then we opened up to basically all the other industries. So that was a great pivotal moment. Always good to get that feedback from large customers, and we saw that as just a continuity of what we were building as a business. And I guess especially being in a smart, fast-growing startup, it's very important to be able to listen to those signals and making sure to constantly readapt your roadmap. So you always look at, an ideal roadmap for the next 3 months, 4 months, and then maybe a slightly longer one with much higher level insights on where you aim to be in the 12 to 24 months. But that's a constantly moving project where you have to reassess priorities and move parts based on customer insights, but also priorities that you're setting up as a business.
Yeah, and I guess the thing with that, I completely agree, is that research, that listening should be a continual process. That learning should be a continual process. I suppose one thing with that is you've got to make sure that you're talking to the right people that are worth listening to as well. And you're obviously talking to some quite big potential customers rather than perhaps starting with smaller, less ideal customers that might have been a more comfortable conversation. So how did you find the right people and identify which ones are worth listening to help shape that direction?
So depending on the type of industry, we've talked to multiple stakeholders. I think what's really important is to understand your customers and their pain points. And at the beginning, we had some ideas on what we thought would be great for our customers. And we obviously started building an MVP and started shaping a product with some insights that we thought would be really, really helpful. And then we launched a product, tested it with some users. And that's when you start realizing that maybe some ideas that you thought would be great are maybe not the best for your customers. Some might like it, some might want to push it further. So I think it's really important to really listen to the customers, really do your market research, and kind of start this whole process in collaboration with the people you want to work with. So we did a lot of customer interview calls, especially for the commercial real estate part, because we started as a platform for retail and started getting a lot of traction from that. But we also had the commercial real estate part that came to us and I was like, we like what you do. Let's have a chat. And then through the customer interviews, we really started understanding what the pain point was for these customers. And then we tried to build a small project or a small feature for these commercial real estate customers based on what we already built. And then we would test that again with these customers. So it's a very different approach where you reach out to somebody just for not trying to sell something, but try to basically have their inputs, have their feedback, ask them if they have maybe 10, 15 minutes to jump on a call, and that you're currently growing business, you're trying to build a solution that will help them make their job better and faster. And most people will take the time to jump on a call and kind of share their feedback. And then, you build that product for them, you get back to them a couple of weeks or a couple of months later and show them basically what you've built. And then it becomes a whole different sale because you ultimately solving the problem. They've told you how to solve it. You've built that for them. And then there's almost no reason for them not to be onboarded after that. And it also puts them in kind of a rewarding position where they see value, and they've actually brought that value and they contributed in that project. So a lot of people actually like to be part of that journey since the beginning, and they usually stick much longer as well. And then you can, ask for some types of referrals to their existing, peers. It's quite easy for them to say, hey, speak to a colleague and be like, hey, I've just worked with this company. They've built this amazing tool that really helps me gather that data in just a couple of clicks. You should have a look at it. And it's that word of mouth that also helps you grow as well, and really helps you build a much stronger argumentation and customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that process you've described gives you that deep understanding of their needs, but it also, as you say, they're part of that journey with you. They're kind of buying into investing in that process, and they're thinking and working out what their value is and their needs are at the same time you are. So kind of coming along there together, I can see that typically does create very engaged customers that do give you those referrals and are kind of advocates or champions for the product as well. Absolutely.
And yeah, I would highly encourage everyone to kind of use that kind of approach. And there's a great book, I think it's the Lean Startup that talks about this build, measure, learn framework to really test new features. And yeah, it's worked really well for us. It's just making sure that, we just get the product out there in a minimum of time with a limited budget, proof that what you're building has a value and is consistent, and then add the feedback and then push it for production. And that's worked very well. And you need to put the right time and the right team to kind of collect that feedback and then feed that into the product team, the strategy team, in order to grow as a company, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned the pandemic earlier as well, and how that's impacted, kind of for people's buying behaviors, and comparing what people are doing now versus then. But in terms of a business built around, retail, commercial, real estate, how has the pandemic affected Olvin itself in terms of, acquiring customers, providing value, and has the value changed because of that potentially?
Yeah, so we actually launched in March 2020, which in terms of timing was probably not the best time. So yeah, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's when basically governments were shutting down the economy. People were staying at home. So trying to sell Fitful Insights when people are at home is a bit tricky. So it was a tough period for us. Obviously, we needed to make sure that we could keep growing as a company, but we could also keep paying the bills and turning the lights on. So we're really focused on basically product development and optimizing our costs. So try to cut wherever we could in terms of maybe marketing initiatives or just spends in terms of travel and sales. Kept the whole team from during that whole period, and really focused on product development and building the platform, optimizing that. But also, as I said earlier, trying to get as much feedback as possible from customers, and feeding that feedback into a product roadmap. And then at the same time, we're looking at creating momentum, talking about Olvin as a company, trying to push as much as we could, especially to larger enterprises, because sales cycles are always longer, and getting access to the right person and that company is always a bit tricky, and you need different champions within the company to get access to the right people. So we started these discussions very early on, And the feedback that we got was, we really like what you're doing, but right now we're not spending any money on software, or we're just making sure that we can keep our own business running.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat in a few months from now. So it started building our pipeline. And then we also looked at maybe joining a few accelerators. So we joined an accelerator called Plug and Play, which is based in Silicon Valley. Applied to that and then joined the cohort in January 2021. That was great. Not only in terms of getting to know other peers that are in a similar stage, that have the same problems. So you really get to bond with a lot of different people that are in the same situation. But you also get great traction and exposure towards their corporates and the companies they're working with. We started running some pilots with companies like PVH or Ford Mobility. We also started working with companies like Uniqlo. So it was really interesting to really have these first pilots. Obviously, at that stage, it was still unpaid, but it was good to get that feedback, understand the use cases, and start building that narrative behind what we're bringing in terms of value and how data can fit different use cases for retailers. So that's been really, really good.
Yeah. No, it sounds like that was a useful time to get some perspective. I think building that narrative, as you say, is incredibly important. And I suppose, in a way, when restrictions lifting, people's shopping behaviors and travel behaviors getting back closer to pre-pandemic, I imagine that retailers are perhaps more motivated now to actually come back stronger.
Absolutely, and really you're seeing that right now. Most companies are thankfully back in business. They want to strive, they want to see how they can look at attracting more customers, but they also want to see how these customers have changed, and our behaviors have changed as well. A lot of people moved outside of the cities with the hybrid working schemes of most companies. People are still staying outside of the cities, but are they going to come back full time in let's say urban areas? So these kind of insights are really paramount for businesses, and they want to understand how these consumer behaviors have changed, and we can really support them with that. So there's a great fit right now in terms of timing. And then the second part would be companies want to have more visibility in terms of prediction, what's going to happen next. And
I see.
Retail has been left apart for quite a long time. We use predictions in a lot of industries, and we actually use it on a daily basis. So, for instance, I guess you're looking at the weather app every day, and when there's going to be a 60% chance that it's going to be raining, are you going to be taking an umbrella or not? These are the kind of data points that help you, make a decision and be ready in case something will happen. We want to be able to provide similar solutions to the retail world, so that they have the right tools in place and can take very quick actions based on these forecasts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can certainly see that. Yeah, people's behaviors are ever changing, but certainly that change has been accelerated, like with many other areas of work, as we've talked about with other businesses. So I can see how that ability to predict and introduce more certainty into what has, had a lot of uncertainty is potentially very valuable and useful to them.
Absolutely. And the approach that we're taking is that right now most demand planners or companies that are trying to forecast are mainly using sales data to do these predictions. They're obviously looking at a few other market dynamics, but having that additional layer of footfall data, I think, is really important because it provides an additional source of data, and it helps you optimize and refine your forecasts. So we see a lot of appetite coming from various industry to get access to more data. Obviously, more data is not always good. That's why you need to be very selective in the types of data that we use. But especially for brick and mortar businesses like restaurants, apparel stores, or I'd say even cinemas, footfall has a tremendous impact on their sales. If people aren't coming to your store, your sales are probably going to tank. We do see some businesses as well that have both the online and the offline presence. And there's always kind of a rivalry between how good are we doing online versus how good are we doing offline. Some people will say that the retail is dying, but we still believe that people do like to go to stores, do like to have the interaction. I don't know how it is for you, but I know that especially after the pandemic, I only had one craving, which was going to as many places as I could and really go back to enjoying a nice meal in a restaurant or trying out some clothes in person and not always ordering things online and shipping them back. And we're seeing levels of footfall going back to the levels pre-pandemic and sometimes even above that. So there is a strong recovery. Obviously, it really depends on the industry and the location. But in large cities like New York or Miami, we see the levels that are going even higher than before. So businesses are striving. They're getting back into business. But also companies are changing their strategies. They're looking at a portfolio of stores and looking at the busyness of these stores. Maybe some stores that were top performing 1 or 2 years ago have significantly dropped, and some other stores that we thought were not doing well. I'd say at the beginning of 2020 in suburban areas are now striving because of that change in people's pattern to go and live in other outside areas.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of change there. So I can certainly see how that data and that appropriate analysis presentation of the data, as well as the predictive side, it can be so massively useful, especially with bigger businesses that are going to have multiple stores, multiple locations. And when it comes to kind of serving those bigger customers as a relatively new company, how do you make sure that you can develop the kinds of features that those bigger customers are going to need and demand and get value from? It's going to be quite different to a single shop. I imagine there's a lot more complexity involved in serving those bigger clients. I'm just curious as to how you've managed to kind of keep pace with that.
Yeah. So our main product is a SaaS, a B2B SaaS platform called Almanac, where we've basically built all the insights for the retailers or the commercial real estate. And that's what we've been pushing for in terms of sales in the last couple of months. But we see that for some companies, having a dashboard is really, really useful. And they want to have that and they want to have the visuals. But for other larger companies that do have data scientists and kind of a big data team, they want to ultimately just get access to the data. So if you look at basically Olvin as a company, the core of what we do is the data. So we have a lot of data. On a daily basis, we analyze more than 1 billion data points. And that's every day. So that's a lot of data that we're storing, analyzing, and processing. And the way we're displaying that on the platform is we've carefully selected the most important insights for the retail, for the commercial real estate industry. But some companies want to have either just the prediction and they want to feed that into their data models. So that's kind of pushed us towards being able to build and develop an additional product line, which are data services.
I see.
And for some companies, we're just kind of providing that feature. And it's, for instance, for large apparel companies that want to kind of feed that into their data. And then the first stage to that is just to provide data feeds or data buckets. And then that's going to evolve later in an API. But I think it's very important to be very transparent with the customer and being able to say, we can do this and we can do it in this way, but we cannot do it in that way. Most people, especially when they're growing as a company, have a tendency to say they can do everything. And once they say yes, they realize how much work it is and how long it's going to take to be developing. So it's very important, I think, to manage expectation and be very transparent and be like, listen, if there's a need for you guys to have that, we can do it, but it's going to take X amount of month and X amount of money for you to kind of commit in order for us to being able to build that. That's the same, for instance, for some of our customers that are asking. Right now, we're only focusing on the US market. Some customers are asking us, how quickly can you do that in another market? Could you be able to do that in Canada or Mexico? The answer to that question is yes, but there needs to be a clear use case and a clear commercial contract tied to that. So it's very important to not start building features and then not having anything in return. And I guess it's also very important to prioritize based on the needs of your customer, making sure that that feature, that specific request has been asked by multiple customers. And once you start, listing all the kind of features, everybody will have a wish list on, oh, this is great, can you do this? Or can you also add that feature? Or can we also input our data? Or can we? So people will always try to ask for much more than you actually have, but it's very important to be strict on what you can and cannot do and start selling what you already have, and then assessing what would be great to have in the future and kind of try to fit that into your roadmap. And then what we've also started doing is for these specific requests that come from customers is kind of have client-led R&D. So we would assess basically the request of a customer. Let it be, I don't know, we need to have this specific type of insights, and we can pull that using our data, but that means that we need to, have our data analysts extract the data, build a report. So it's more like a consultative kind of bespoke project that would be doing for a customer. At the beginning, that would be very manual, but the aim would be to kind of automate that and then feed that to a new insight in the platform. So we started doing that third part of products, which is kind of custom reports for some of our customers, as long as it fits our roadmap and our vision as a company, and also if it fits basically and covers our R&D needs. So making sure that the project will not be more expensive than what it actually will take us, not only in terms of data processing, data sources, but also man hours. So right now, just to kind of summarize what I just said is we're focusing on 3 product lines to serve our different customer segments. The first one is the B2B SaaS platform called Almanac. And the second one is the data feed. And the third one is everything that's custom reports. And in order to really understand how to best serve our customer needs, I think it's very important to qualify what our customers want, what's the problems, and how our data can solve that in the best way. And then for each customer, we'll take the time to see which solution is the best for them, and how can we help them use our solution in the best way so they can take data-driven decisions.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It sounds, very similar to what we tell clients as well. Is you've got to validate those problems and pain points first. You've got to validate that what you have in mind is an appropriate solution to that problem, and then thirdly, you've got to validate that there's commercials behind that as well, that they're then willing to pay to have that problem solved. And like what you were saying about making sure that there is that commercial model. But I think also you've described something which is very good in terms of identifying where your core value is. So, mentioning the data feeds to those bigger clients where they've got their own data teams. I know other businesses that would not take decisions like that because they're so protective of the whole user experience and didn't want to let that go because they're afraid of, losing control in some way. But if you recognize that the data, the insights are the core of what we do, then there are the best way to deliver that to different types of consumers and different segments, can and should be different.
Absolutely. And our role is also to educate our users. We want to make sure that we're seen as the go-to platform when it comes to predictive footfall analytics, and that goes by making sure that the quality of our predictions are very, very strong. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything to make sure that our insights are accurate and help our customers take these decisions, because the foundation of what we do is accuracy. How good is it to have insights and predictive insights if the accuracy is very bad? We want to make sure that we're guiding our consumers with the strongest accuracy levels as possible. And in order to do that, there's a lot of different processes, but what we're currently working on is we're partnering with one of the largest company in the US that provides security materials to stores. So mainly also cameras, so that we can actually have a ground truth validation. So how can we make sure that our data that comes from geospatial data actually matches with actual in-store visits? And in order to do that, we're combining those different data sets. So through the cameras, we are able to understand how many people are going in a store, up to a 99.7% accuracy. So we actually get the actual number of people visiting a store, and then we're correlating that with our data, and then use this data from more than 125,000 stores across the US to really scale our models and learn from it on a daily basis. So that gives us a very, very powerful tool that right now nobody else has done in the industry. And I think that gives us a clear competitive advantage, and really helps us achieve our mission to become this most trusted source of data.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting and a great way to use partnerships to really improve the quality of the products. I think some companies can be a bit too obsessed with build versus kind of buy or partner, and I think it comes down to what we're saying before: recognize where the core value is. By partnering, you're not going to turn them into a competitor. You're working in partnership. That's what they're there for, to support what you're trying to achieve for your kind of customer segment, your use case.
Exactly. And there is a variety of partnerships. There's data partnerships, there is sales partnerships, there's strategic partnerships, marketing partnerships. Wherever we see an opportunity, especially as a growing startup, we're trying to secure that. And it's important to have these logos, these big company names on your website, have these testimonials, because it helps you sell ultimately. If they see that you've partnered, let's say, for instance, we're partnering with Google, that gives confidence as well to the end user, the customer ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about building that trust and credibility with that audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of anything else, I think we've covered quite a lot of really, really good points about kind of understanding that customer and understanding where the value is. for them, and some really good insights in terms of how you've then been able to take that forward into kind of growing the product line and platform. Is there anything else, kind of any other mistakes or learnings that you want to get across to our audience today?
Yeah, well, I think all of what we've accomplished would have never been possible without our team. And I guess, as a company, you spend a lot of time hiring, making sure you have the right structure in place, and making sure that you're covering and attracting talent in the best way. And I guess, it's a lot of companies are kind of advertising this, but I would say it's really important to really hire slowly, because it takes time to find the right talent. It takes time to make sure that not only they're the right technical fit and they're perfectly capable of doing their job, but they also need to be a right fit for the company. And, obviously we hired some people that were either not performing well, and they, even though they had a great CV, at the end when they start working and have their day-to-day task, it doesn't work well, and then you have to split ways. So that puts you back to square zero, where you have to start the whole interview process. So you're not only losing time, but you're also losing money, and you're also in some way losing a bit of confidence from people on your team if you systematically hire people and need to let them go after a couple of weeks. That kind of has a strong impact on morale. So I think it's really, really important to structure well the interview process, make sure you have the right people, because these are the people that will help you build and grow. And without this right team, you won't be able to build a successful company.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good advice. And when you're hiring, you're not hiring for the short term, you're hiring for the long term. And too many people can make short-term decisions based on the candidates that are in front of them. So not should we hire this person or who should we hire, but it is that kind of, okay, we've only got 5 people. Which one is the best or the least worst in some cases, rather than are they perfect for this role?
Absolutely. And in that situation, if you have 3 people, let's say in the final round, but you're still not convinced, then I would highly recommend to keep interviewing people, and don't take decisions based on the fact that you only have a certain pool of candidates. If they don't fit your requirements, then take more time to hire them. Because most people think, oh, we have so much work to do, this person will just do fine. But at the end, they don't do fine. And you end up spending way more time trying to support them, trying to help them grow, and then it doesn't work. And again, you have to start. So really take time hiring and make sure that they fit the team. It's super important.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And in terms of where we are now then, and as we go through the rest of the year and onwards, what's next then for the growth of Olvin? What are the things you've got going on? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. So right now we're all really focusing on our growth. So bringing in as many customers as possible, making sure we're onboarding them in the right way, and our customer support team, guides them through the whole process. We want to be at around 100K MRR by the end of the year. And then we'll look at doing our Series A in probably summer 2023, where we'll be looking to raise between $10 and $15 million. So we need to kind of show that growth in these couple of months, going from traction to having the first paying customer to really having a consistent recurring customer base. And we are at that kind of hockey stick growth curve where, it's always the chicken and the egg at the beginning, where you want to have customers, but customers want to join only if you have use cases and different things. And this is very hard, and it's a problem that all startups will have. But once you've passed that stage and build these use cases, it becomes much easier to onboard these customers and show them the value of your platform. So it's going to be, as I said, focused on sales growth, growing a bit the team, and then we're going to be focusing on raising our Series A.
Cool, awesome. No, sounds very exciting road ahead, and I look forward to hearing more about that growth, as I'm sure we will as we go through the coming months and into next year. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time today to talk. I'm sure there are many other things we could dive into, but I think it's a good place to call it now. I think there's a lot that people can take away from this conversation on kind of growth, on value, and approaching customer feedback and development the right way and going after the right kind of customer. So I think it's been really, really useful, interesting to me, talking to you today, and I'm sure it will be for the audience. So thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you so much for inviting me today, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.